And we're back with the second part of the progression guide. You can watch the first part here. In this one, I will be showcasing my base and retracing all the steps that it took to get here, explaining the mistakes I made along the way. Everything that I will talk about will be as simple as the game allows it to be, and there will be no overly complicated builds that need years of explaining. Still, if you like diving deeper, I will leave a whole bunch of links in the pinned comment for you. Just like the first part, this guide is a blueprint for players that are lost in this game, providing direction on what to do and in what order at every stage of the game. If you're playing for the first time, I recommend watching it in full and then coming back to certain parts of it as you play the game. I include chapters to make it easier. I will also use Sandbox from now on to better illustrate some of the concepts I'll be talking about, but bear in mind that enabling Sandbox disables achievements. You can see by this checkmark that this save file hasn't had Sandbox enabled before. Okay, so hopefully you've managed to get your SPOM running since the last time we talked. There's a chance your SPOM setup is giving you a little bit of excess power to use in your base, but that won't be enough, and by this point you must have already plugged yourself into the coke outlet. But if you're anything like me, you haven't yet thought about sustainability of coal generators, and before your coal runs out, you better start ranching those cumberbatches. Pesky hatches, hope you haven't yet eaten all of them. So there's two ways to ranch them. The first one is the beginner way and the second's more advanced. The difference is that a beginner will eat omelets while someone who doesn't mind wasting their time in the name of efficiency will eventually eat barbecues. You choose, and I'll leave guides for both in the pinned comments. Either way, it's going to take some time to breed enough of them to feed everyone, so keep on exploring the map and you'll eventually find wild sleet wheat. This is an amazing food source, so get your rear to the ice biome, open it up, close it off with mechanical doors, then get in there again and dig out a passage to all the sleet wheat grains in such a way as to not have any ceiling collapses that would bury the plants or uproot them. If you do happen to bury a plant, order a dig as soon as you can and then click on the plant and cancel the uproot errand, otherwise you'll lose the plant. Then, fire up that grill and set it to make frost buns forever. Now, I'll quickly go back to the hatches to explain some key concepts about ranching. Every critter has a different set amount of tiles that it needs in a room to feel comfortable. A room is any room with or without doors but entirely closed off. A ranch room can be maximum 96 tiles and every hatch needs 12 tiles. So you can cram 8 hatches in a ranch, but they don't care about how much space they have for the actual movement, they only care about the size of their room. So something like this is technically fine to keep up the population, but you won't get to groom and domesticate them this way. So the only realistic way of ranching the hatches is in a room like this, or like this. A hatch ranch will provide you with a steady supply of coal so that you can make refined carbon, which we'll need in a bit. So go on and feed those sandstones and sedimentary rocks to them, and don't worry about running out of rocks as you'll switch to one of the more sustainable power solutions soon enough. Your options will be finding some geyser or vent to power steam turbines, hydrogen generators or natural gas generators, extracting oil for petroleum generators, building solar panels, farming trees for wood and ethanol, or doing a lot of manipulation with the environment to produce these resources in other ways, which at this point you're unlikely to be able to. There are a few other options like boilers and harvesting energy from volcanoes or magma, but those are too early to even mention. Most of the solutions might require you to go online and search for designs that tame some vent or geyser or ranch hatches efficiently. This is fine. You could come up with something yourself of course, but be prepared that it might not be optimal and will need multiple iterations to get it working correctly, in which time you might lose your colony because you didn't know you had to account for something and now it's too late. This is totally fine though, and there is no shame in restarting the game. Alternatively, try it out in sandbox mode and see if your design survives in the long term. All those designs will require advanced materials to actually build them, and that's exactly what you will focus on next. To advance, you will need refined metals, steel, fiber, and possibly glass. Out of all the materials, fiber is the first in the order of business as it will allow us to make atmo suits that will make our dupes invulnerable to heat and other hazards, and thanks to the SPOM you created earlier, you'll have oxygen to actually pipe into those suits. To learn all the ways you can actually get fiber, just use the database. I make mine by ranching Dracos in a room with pincha pepper nuts and balm lily flowers, which the Dracos feed on. To prevent overcrowding, when there's more than 7 of them in the room, the extra eggs get sent to the drowning room here, from which the meat gets sent directly to the kitchen. This water here makes sure no gas ever leaves this room, and this water column was a total accident, but I like it. The hot water from the vents here is how I ensure that the room is kept at above 35 degrees Celsius, which is the required temperature for pincha pepper nut. I have temperature sensor here that opens this liquid shutoff whenever the temperature in the room drops below the peppernut's temperature requirement, which introduces some of that hot water into the room, which then gets stuck over here until its temperature drops below 36 from exchanging heat with the gases in the room. Once that happens, the shutoff opens and sends the water to this bathroom. When somebody uses the bathroom, the polluted water then moves towards this water sieve, where it combines with the polluted water from this carbon skimmer, which I set up here to make sure there's no accumulation of CO2 in this closed area. The water sieve cleans the water and sends it back to the carbon skimmer and the bathroom, and then, because of the way this bridge is set to handle overflow, if there is no space here for the water to move into, it gets sent into this pool, from which my dupes can then take this water for their needs using the pitcher pump. A Draco wrench like this cannot be used without atmo suits, which require reed fiber. And this is the Soul Thimble reed, the hero that provided me with the reed fiber at the start that I needed to craft the atmo suits and make a sustainable wrench like that. Now, why did I tell you all of that? Drop a comment below if you think you know why. I won't torture you like that with relation to other materials I mentioned, but there's one thing that can wreck your colony that pertains to all of the buildings that produce those materials: heat. At this stage, the best way to deal with the heat from those buildings is to build them farther away from your base, in rooms full of natural tiles. You'll be surprised how much heat they can take in before they heat up. And then, when you later mine out these natural tiles, almost half the heat produced by these buildings will be deleted, because when you mine out anything, you only get half of that tile's mass as usable material, so half the heat. The disadvantage of this is that you might need atmo suits to access those areas safely, or have to let the heat dissipate in between uses. I wish it was as easy to use all these industrial buildings as just plopping them anywhere, but it's still easier than you expect. This means that for our early industrial brick, we need to find a pool of polluted water and pipe it through the refinery. When we do, the water will heat up by 56 degrees Celsius, so the hottest water that you can pipe in without your water breaking your pipes is 63 degrees Celsius, since the boiling point of polluted water is 119. So what you need to do is pump some polluted water, run it through the refinery, and then pipe it in a loop through your water pool like this, ideally with a few radiant pipes. The reason I'm using this loop is so that we don't have to run the liquid pump and waste energy. You could dump the liquid from the pipes back into the pool so it mixes in and then gets drowned by the liquid pump again, but then you'd just be wasting power. Looping the water in pipes through the pool achieves the same thing, but doesn't waste energy. I highly recommend that you learn how bridges work. They're extremely powerful and allow you to save a ton of energy. Links in the pinned comment. Anyhow, be careful not to boil your coolant and take pauses in between uses to let the heat dissipate. Also, you'll need lots of power, so put that hatch coal to good use and place some coal generators nearby. Don't drag a kilometer of wires, and don't bother coming up with some nice design for your industry yet, as you'll likely uproot it anyway once you get access to other buildings and materials. It's prudent to put kilns separately from the other buildings as it heats up much more, and to use the refinery sparingly just to produce the steel and metals when you need them. And while your operators are busy with that, it's time for your diggers to put on their star-spangled hats, because if you're playing the Terra Asteroid or Classic Start with Spaced Out enabled, this planet's got oil. Setting up petroleum and plastic production can be daunting, as all the production buildings just spit all their outputs out into the environment and it can get messy quickly. To contain all of that, I have this late game setup. I wish I could tell you that you can just dump everything into the world and deal with it later, but I've done that before and it's a messy ordeal. Instead, I propose that you do a bit of prep and it will pay off in the long run. All you need is atmo suits, research sensors, and a bit of steel. First, build your oil well locked with a crude oil liquid lock and a vacuum tile, liquid and gas pumps made of steel, and 3 sensors set to the following. Have the gas pump work its way into a nat gas generator, or just dump it into a storage for now, and send the liquid pipes into an oil refinery made of gold amalgam that mirrors the oil well setup, but without the liquid pump. Naturally, have atmo suits when entering hot areas like this, and pipe the output of the oil refinery into a polymer press. In my case, I have polymer press sitting in a pool of water with a pipe running from an Aquatuner through a temp shift plate to cool all the steam that polymer press produces, a mini pump to collect the produced water and send it to my oil wells, and an auto sweeper to collect all the plastic, but this is not necessary. People tend to overthink polymer press setups, but it's fairly straightforward. As I said, natural tiles are surprisingly good at absorbing heat, so all you really need to do to get some of that sweet plastic is put your polymer press in any area with natural tiles, even better if it's a cold area, and drop some liquid on it. This way your press will not overheat. Here's how it looked like in my old save. Here, the polymer press was 3 degrees Celsius, and the cold biome allowed me to eventually produce over 20 tons of plastic before the ice melted, and I could run it longer than that if I wanted to. Now, what if I told you that there's a massive amount of power at your fingertips? That's right, petroleum generators are power positive, so just plop one in like I have, and you'll have enough power to run the whole oil industry, and then some.
But petroleum generator produces 20 kBtu per second. Isn't it massive? What am I gonna do with all that heat?
You'll ask me. Well, my friend, let me reintroduce you to ATST, or Aquatuner and Steam Turbine Combo. Again, I will leave the links to explanations in the pinned comment, but all you need to know is that this thing is magic and can cool even magma. And to build it you only need steel, plastic, refined metal, water, polluted water, and research. If you're playing the base game, congrats, you can already build them. If you're playing the DLC, then hang tight, we're almost there. You already have the steel for Aquatuners and plastic for steam turbines, and all that's left is getting some red bolts to research them. Thankfully, it's easier than it looks. Just plant some Weezeworts in a V pattern, build an autosweeper to fertilize them with phosphorite, red bolt generators for collecting and diverting red bolts towards your material study terminal, and enjoy your healthy dose of radiation. There's no need to set up any decontamination showers or anything, since all the radiation is limited to this area that dupes never visit. And now, after all this time, finally, you can do it. You can conquer any volcano, any vent, any geyser. Heat is not a problem. Now, heat is just another source of energy. Yes, you have acquired a superpower. You can build an ATST. Give yourself a round of applause because you've earned it. Now comes the hard part, where you stop playing the game and instead spend your time watching YouTube videos and reading up on techniques and designs. You must already have a backlog of things you want to do now, but here's how I would approach it. I'd locate the place on your map that would have the access to most amount of power and relocate your industry there. There's two ways of setting up industry that I know of. One is to have all the buildings in a so-called industrial brick, which is accessed through atmo docks and which is filled with steam that is then used in steam turbines to produce power. The other method is to build them wherever you please and cool them separately with the help of AATN or Aquatuner. This second method is my method of choice, as you can see by the amazing layout of my base. It looks big at first glance, but it's actually all Aquatuners and steam turbines. Aquatuner for the gas geyser and generators, Aquatuner for the gold volcano, Aquatuner for the steam vents, Aquatuner for the volcano, Aquatuner for the power producers, Aquatuners for natural gas again, Aquatuner for the industry and the steam vent, Aquatuner for the iron volcano, Aquatuner for liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen, Aquatuner for the solar panels, batteries, and the space base. You can see that Aquatuner and steam turbine combo is an essential part of the game, and at this point in the game you absolutely must master this combo. And if you haven't yet mastered pipe bridges, it's high time you get a hang of them too. They're the backbone of the whole setup. I will leave the cheat sheets and guides for both in the pinned comment. After setting up your industry and spending more time than you'd like to admit on conquering different geysers and vents, you've likely fixed all the problems you might have had with the power, water, oxygen, maybe you even have an infinite supply of refined metals now, but there's one thing that geysers cannot fix: food. It's time to think about food more sustainably and set something up that will keep your dupes fed and happy through the end game. At this point you should already have enough of the map revealed to know what food options are available to you, so you can visit the wiki of the game to assess which foods would be easiest to prepare from start to finish. In general, I advise you make it a habit to check wiki.gg for information. Don't use fandom as it's not maintained anymore and some articles are bigoted. By this point you probably have ranches set up, so it should have a steady supply of meat. Why not add some pacu and water and replace barbecues with surf and turf? Or if you have a Dreco ranch with pincho pepper nuts like I had shown you before, all you have to do to make the superb pepper bread is add some sleet wheat, which you quite likely have lots of growing in your world, or if you have the prehistoric DLC you might as well farm the big critters for tough meat. Whichever you choose, you're likely to have excess calories that you'd like to preserve for when you get more dupes or want to go to space. The only foods that don't spoil are pemmican, production of which you can actually set up very early in the game, just check my video here, berry sludge, and the starting ones like nutrient bars and muckroots. For other foods, you can dehydrate them or create a sterile room and cool it to under minus 18 degrees Celsius. There's many designs out there, but this is the one I use. It's a hydrogen room with a Weezewort inside, fertilized by the autosweeper's all-reaching arm, which also takes the food from the room and fills the fridge once it's empty. This is one of those infinite storage solutions that is considered an exploit because it allows the autosweeper to reach into a closed room. I have also tried to be a purist for a while and avoided using infinite storage solutions, but I eventually caved in because the amount of time I was spending trying to deal with all the extra water and gas was just not funny. Speaking of which, there's 3 more infinite storage solutions I use. This one takes care of gas. Normally, a tile can hold at most 20 kilograms of gas. This one holds hell of a lot more. The 2 conditions to make this work are the following: at least 2 tiles of liquid that doesn't of gas, and less than 2 kilograms of liquid in each of those tiles. And here's the infinite liquid storage, which works similarly but needs airflow tiles to hold the liquid, as other tiles break from the pressure. I talk about how to set this and other exploits in more depth in my video on exploits. Check it out here if you want to learn more about infinite gas and liquid storage, as well as other more direct ways to abuse this game's mechanics. And if you don't want to actually set up infinite storage, a completely valid way to get rid of extra gas or liquid is to simply vent them to space. Obviously, if you just want to merge all the little pockets of gas and liquid spread around the map, venting is not an option. Then, just use the reservoirs like you normally would, but put them in a room that holds the same type of gas or liquid as the reservoirs to maximize the usage of space. And the last type of infinite storage that I use is something that will help the performance of your computer as you're preparing for the late game. It's just a resource pit with automatic dispensers as an alternative to a million storage bins, set to sweep only. Just sweep all the debris at a low priority, so that whenever your dupes would go idling, they sweep the floors instead. Messy floors not only decrease decor and duplicate morale, but they also make your computer work harder. Yes, even the immobile stuff that just lays on the ground. A tile like this can contain all the materials of your world and then some, so don't worry about resources disappearing or anything like that. However, there is a catch to this, and it's that you can't just set it to receive all the materials and call it a day. I've said this in the previous video, you want to keep sublimators like slime and oxalite in liquid so they don't off gas. But also be careful not to mix in very hot materials over 100 degrees Celsius like regolith or refined metals, as stuff like algae will turn into dirt if the temperature gets to 125 degrees. That's why I do still use storage bins for some extra organization of rarer and more valuable things like glass, refined metals, and potentially hot materials. You've taken care of power, oxygen, water, food, and even swept up all the debris, but your duplicants are unhappy. What is it? What more could they possibly want? Well, admit it, you've been feeding their bodies but starving their souls. Well, shouldn't be a massive problem if you've set up some advanced food production for them and built specialized rooms. Great Hall gives a massive boost, for example, so does Nature Reserve, and now with plastic you can pamper them with private bedrooms. I have some tips for improving morale with the help of Nature Reserve and smart scheduling in my tips and tricks video here. Still unhappy? That's when you get yourself a decorator. Ideally, someone who can learn the Masterworks skill right away, so you don't have to redo all the decorations later. I'll leave a great guide for decor in the pinned comment. And once you're done, it might be a good idea to remove all the decoration skills from your decorator dupe with the skill scrubber. Still unhappy? See if your dupes have learned too many skills and whether you can delegate some of those to other, maybe new dupes. Don't hesitate to use skill scrubber. There might also be CO2 pooling at the bottom of your base unless you've set up an infinite storage for it. What you do with it is you either store it, vent it into space, feed it to slicksters, or set up a scrubber sieve loop like this, just like the one we had in the lavatory. If you were spamming stuff without bothering to set up sustainable solutions, you might find yourself in a situation where you're suddenly out of resources. Thankfully, it doesn't always mean that you're out of luck. Just look up the wiki or use the in-game database to find ways to produce that thing you're lacking. And think critically about it. Do you even need it? If you do, is there a better way? Going back to the example with the SPOM, running out of algae is not the end of the world if you have the time to transition to SPOM. And also, try to think of the whole supply chain from start to finish. Maybe you can set up a sustainable solution or find one online. For example, if you need dirt, instead of relying on manual dupe labor to compost polluted dirt that you get from pacus or water sieves, set up a pip ranch like this with a few wild trees. Don't worry if you don't have any natural tiles left to plant the trees, all you need is a little bit of exploit. Check out my video on exploits to learn how. Such a ranch will pay for itself with meat and lots of dirt at the expense of a bit of a duplicant labor. That's the one resource that you will never run out of. But that's just one example. Surely there are ways to get the resources you need through the help of vents and volcanoes. If that's not possible, your only solution might be going to space. The first step to conquering space is building a telescope, but it's not that simple. You'll have to breach the surface for that, and there be monsters if you come unprepared. This and more you will find in the next video of this progression guide series, which unfortunately will be limited to Spaced Out due to the more complicated nature of rocketry there. I will show you all the cool stuff you can do in your game now that you have achieved sustainability and your base can survive without your supervision. It can survive without your supervision, right, Anon?